The sky above Earth was calm, a normal day for most of the people on the planet. However, something unexpected was about to shatter that calmness. Far away in space, an enormous fleet of alien ships made its way toward Earth, the kind of fleet that could obliterate entire cities with a single strike. These weren't just any aliens. They were Deathworlders, a species from a planet known for its ruthless and powerful inhabitants. The Deathworlders had heard rumors of Earth, of a peaceful planet full of weak humans who wouldn't dare resist an invasion. They were used to conquering planets, and Earth seemed like an easy target. They believed humans would bow down to their superior technology, surrendering without a fight. The Deathworlders had come to claim Earth's resources, and they didn't care about the humans or their lives. It was just business for them. As the alien fleet entered Earth's orbit, they sent a message to the leaders of the planet. It was clear and cold, a demand for Earth's resources to be handed over. If the humans did not comply, they would face destruction. The message was sent without a hint of fear, as the Deathworlders were certain the humans would surrender. But on Earth, things were not as the Deathworlders had expected. The leaders of the planet didn't panic. They weren't scared of the threats. They knew the aliens were coming, and they had prepared. For years, Earth's military had been working secretly, building up its defenses. The governments of Earth knew that one day, someone would come to test their strength. Inside the military command center, the situation was tense. The humans were outmatched in technology, but they weren't without their own strengths. The Earth leaders gathered, knowing that the fate of humanity was in their hands. General Sandra Miller, one of the most respected military leaders on Earth, stood at the front of the room, looking at the massive alien fleet displayed on the holographic screen. Her mind raced with calculations, trying to figure out the best way to respond. "We may be outnumbered," she said calmly, addressing her fellow commanders. "But we are not powerless. We've trained for this, and we will show them what Earth is capable of." As General Miller spoke, a quiet determination settled over the room. Earth wasn't going to bow down to anyone, no matter how advanced the aliens were. The Deathworlders had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. While the leaders met in the command center, the Deathworlders were already preparing to make their move. The alien fleet hovered over Earth, sending down a squadron of smaller ships to the surface. The humans watched as the ships descended, landing in various locations around the world. It was a show of force, meant to intimidate and strike fear into the hearts of humanity. The Deathworlders believed the humans would be helpless, that they would scatter in fear, unable to defend their homes. But as the alien ships touched down, they were met with a surprising sight. Instead of fleeing, the people of Earth began to rally. There was no panic. There was no chaos. Humanity had stood together before, and they would do so again. Across the globe, soldiers prepared to defend their cities. People in every country knew that their world was about to change forever. The alien ships may have landed, but Earth was not going to be conquered without a fight. From the streets of New York to the hills of the Amazon, people were ready. The Deathworlders, watching from above, began to realize that they had made a serious miscalculation. They had expected humans to crumble at the sight of their powerful fleet. They had expected easy submission. But instead, they saw defiance, determination, and strength. Humanity was united, and they would not give up without a battle. General Miller's voice rang out through the command center. "Prepare for battle. We will not let them take our world. This is humanity's stand." The first shots were fired, and a war unlike any other began. Earth's forces weren't as technologically advanced as the Deathworlders, but they had something the aliens could never understand: an unbreakable spirit. The Deathworlders were about to learn that humans, when pushed, would never be easy prey. The first encounter had begun. Earth's response was swift, surprising, and full of determination. The aliens may have expected an easy conquest, but they had awakened a force they couldn't comprehend. The battle for Earth was just beginning, and the Deathworlders would soon discover that humans were not so easy to defeat. As the first wave of alien ships touched down on Earth, the Deathworlders began to spread across the planet. Their technology was far more advanced than anything the humans had ever seen. Massive warships hovered above cities, casting shadows over skyscrapers and buildings. Smaller scout ships, sleek and deadly, darted through the sky, looking for any signs of resistance. The Deathworlders assumed it would be a walk in the park. Their initial scans showed no signs of a strong military force, and the human cities below appeared calm, almost too calm. To the aliens, this only confirmed their belief that Earth was filled with weak, defenseless beings. They landed in strategic locations, major capitals, military bases, and industrial zones, planning to seize control quickly. But the Deathworlders did not know the humans had a hidden weapon, Earth's will to fight. The humans had spent years preparing for this moment, even though they didn't know when it would come. General Sandra Miller and her team had spent countless hours training, studying the alien fleet, and developing countermeasures. What the Deathworlders had missed was the quiet, relentless spirit of humanity. In cities all over the world, resistance forces began to stir. The streets filled with the hum of military vehicles and the sound of marching boots. Ordinary people, who had never picked up a weapon before, were now prepared to do whatever it took to protect their homes. Soldiers and civilians joined forces, working together with a single goal: to drive the invaders from their planet. The first strike came in the form of an air assault. The human military, armed with new experimental aircraft, launched an attack on one of the alien ships hovering over the city of London. It wasn't the most powerful strike in terms of technology, but it was swift and precise. The humans knew they couldn't match the alien strength head-on, so they used the element of surprise. General Miller had ordered the attack, and it was her strategy that had made it possible. The humans knew how to use their environment to their advantage. They knew their cities like the back of their hands. Every alley, every hidden passageway. They would fight smarter, not harder. The alien ship over London was caught off guard. The human aircraft swarmed the ship, launching missiles and laser blasts. At first, the Deathworlders tried to retaliate, but they were unprepared for the quick, coordinated attack. Their shields, which had been thought to be impenetrable, began to weaken under the assault. It was clear that the humans weren't backing down. The alien commander, a ruthless being named Cranner, watched in disbelief as the shields of his ship flickered. He had assumed that Earth's defenses would be non-existent. He had not counted on the humans' resourcefulness. His forces had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. Reinforcements. Now, Cranner ordered angrily. He was not used to being challenged, let alone by a race he thought was insignificant. He had come to Earth expecting an easy victory, but now he saw that the humans were not going to give up so easily. As the alien ship tried to recover, more human forces arrived, launching another round of attacks. This time, Earth's forces were armed with technology specifically designed to target the weak points of the alien ships. The Deathworlders had superior weaponry, but the humans had determination and ingenuity. And in the chaos of battle, those two traits proved to be a dangerous combination. The first strike had been a success, but it came with a cost. The humans had suffered casualties, and the Deathworlders were not going to let this slight go unanswered. But despite the losses, the humans remained resolute. They had sent a message: Earth would not go down without a fight. As Cranner ordered his forces to retaliate, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of warriors Earth had produced. These humans, with their limited technology, had managed to put up a fight. He had underestimated them before, but now he knew this would be no easy conquest. The battle for Earth was just beginning, and both sides were preparing for what would come next. General Miller stood in her command center, watching the results of the first strike. The air was thick with tension, but there was also a spark of hope. The humans had done it. They had struck back, and they were ready for more. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice steady. We'll show them what Earth is made of. The humans had made their first mark in this war, and they had proven something very important to the Deathworlders. Earth wasn't a weak planet full of defenseless creatures. It was a place where people fought for their survival, and that was something the Deathworlders would have to learn to respect. The battle was far from over, but the Deathworlders had been given a taste of what Earth could do when pushed too far. And for the first time, the aliens weren't so sure they had made the right decision by attacking this world. After the humans' first successful strike, there was no turning back. The Deathworlders, shaken by the unexpected resistance, scrambled to regroup and adapt. They had never encountered a species like this before, one that not only fought back, but did so with such ferocity. It was clear that Earth was not going to be an easy conquest. In the wake of the first attack, General Sandra Miller and her team quickly realized that this was just the beginning. The Deathworlders had already begun mobilizing reinforcements, calling in backup from their vast fleets hidden in the stars. Earth had made its stand, but now the real battle would begin. As the days passed, the world's governments came together. They had no choice. In the face of this alien threat, there was no room for division. Nations that once bickered over borders and resources were now united in a single cause: survival. Military forces from every corner of the Earth combined their strengths. Soldiers who had never met before suddenly found themselves side by side, fighting for the same goal. The alien forces, meanwhile, had begun to realize that they had underestimated humanity's resilience. Their warships had been damaged, and their communication systems were filled with disturbing reports from the front lines. The initial attack had caught them off guard, but now they had to reassess their approach. Commander Cranner, their leader, was not one to admit defeat, but even he could feel the shift in momentum. As Earth's forces prepared for what would surely be a brutal retaliation, General Miller focused on organizing the defense. The human military was not just relying on brute force. They had learned from their first encounter. Earth's forces were now deploying more advanced tactics, using guerrilla warfare and hit-and-run strategies. The Deathworlders might have superior technology, but humanity had something they didn't: the advantage of knowing their own terrain. While Cranner ordered his fleet to reorganize and prepare for a counterstrike, Earth's leaders began to make plans for an offensive. They couldn't simply wait for the next attack. They needed to go on the offensive to push the Deathworlders back and show them that Earth was not a world to be conquered easily. In the heart of Europe, a powerful coalition of human military leaders and scientists had been working tirelessly on a new weapon. If the Deathworlders were going to threaten Earth, they would need to be shown just how dangerous humanity could be. It was time to reveal the weapon they had been developing, a weapon designed to break the aliens' technological edge. "We've been working on this for years," Dr. Helena Vargas, the lead scientist, said as she stood before the weapon's core. "It's a pulse weapon. It targets their shields, disrupts their power sources, and disables their ships." The weapon was an act of desperation, but Earth's leaders had no choice. It was humanity's final trump card. They had to use it now or risk losing everything. The plan was simple: deploy the pulse weapon into the heart of the Deathworlders' fleet. The moment it was unleashed, their ships would be rendered useless. But time was running out. The Deathworlders were regrouping faster than the humans had expected, and their reinforcements were arriving. If the pulse weapon wasn't deployed soon, the aliens might overwhelm Earth's defenses. General Miller knew this was their best shot. The weapon could be the key to driving the Deathworlders off their planet, but it had to work. If it failed, humanity would face the full force of the alien retaliation. "Get the pulse weapon ready for deployment," Miller ordered. "We don't have much time. If we don't hit them first, we'll be the ones on the defensive." As the weapon was prepared, the battle raged on. Earth's forces clashed with the Deathworlders in the skies and on the ground. Every city became a battleground. The streets were filled with the sounds of battle, explosions echoing through the air as the two forces collided. In the middle of it all, the humans fought with everything they had. Soldiers fired their weapons with precision, knowing their families and homes were on the line. Civilians, many of them once unarmed, now joined the fight, using anything they could find to help push the aliens back. They had been forced into war, but they were fighting not just for survival, but for the future of Earth. The Deathworlders had underestimated the sheer will of humanity. They had thought that Earth would crumble under their superior firepower, but they had failed to understand the strength that lay in the hearts of its people. The first wave of attacks had revealed that the humans were not just a race to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with. General Miller, watching the battlefield unfold, knew one thing for sure. Earth would not go down without a fight. And if the pulse weapon worked, they would show the Deathworlders just how powerful humanity could be when pushed to the brink. As Earth's forces prepared for the counteroffensive, the first signs of the weapon's deployment began. The skies lit up with streaks of light as humanity's last hope made its way toward the Deathworlder fleet. It was time for the aliens to face the consequences of their actions. The battle for Earth had only just begun, but one thing was certain. Humanity was no longer the underdog. The moment the pulse weapon was deployed, the entire battlefield shifted. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for months, working tirelessly on the technology that could potentially turn the tide of war. Now, as the weapon hurtled towards the Deathworlder fleet, there was a quiet sense of anticipation. Could it really work? Would it be enough to drive them back? General Sandra Miller watched from the command center, her fingers gripped tightly around the edges of the console. She had spent countless hours planning, coordinating, and fighting to get to this point. Her mind raced with questions, but there was no time for doubt. The pulse weapon had to succeed. Earth's survival depended on it. The weapon's energy buildup was visible from space, a glowing sphere of energy traveling faster than any ship could. The Deathworlders, having already been alerted to its existence, scrambled to prepare their defenses. But it was too late. The weapon was almost upon them. The first Deathworlder ships were hit almost instantly. They had seen the weapon coming, but they had underestimated its power. The pulse hit like a shockwave, immediately incapacitating their shields and disrupting their internal systems. Their massive warships, once formidable and terrifying, were now sitting ducks in space, unable to maneuver or fire their weapons. One by one, the ships began to fall silent. Commander Craner, the leader of the Deathworlder fleet, stood frozen at the heart of his command ship. The immense fleet, which had once been so confident in its ability to dominate Earth, was now paralyzed. His eyes widened in disbelief as he saw his fleet descend into chaos. His strongest warships, the core of his military might, were disabled in a matter of seconds. The pulse weapon had cut through their advanced technology like a hot knife through butter. Impossible. Craner muttered under his breath, his mind reeling. How did they? He slammed his fist onto the console, frustration and disbelief consuming him. He had underestimated the humans. They were supposed to be weak, primitive, an easy target for an advanced species like his. But instead, the humans had proven to be the opposite of what he had expected. They were resilient, cunning, and capable of achieving feats no one had predicted. Meanwhile, General Miller and her team watched the events unfold with a mix of disbelief and elation. The pulse weapon was working. The tide of the battle was turning in humanity's favor. Ships that had once felt invincible were now floating in space like sitting ducks, their engines fried and their weapons disabled. The Deathworlders' response was swift but ineffective. They were no longer the superior force. Now it was Earth's turn to strike back. The Earth fleet, bolstered by the success of the pulse weapon, surged forward. Fighters, bombers, and warships powered by human ingenuity and determination moved toward the disabled Deathworlder ships. Human pilots, many of whom had once been ordinary civilians, now stood as the last line of defense for Earth. They knew the stakes. If they failed, Earth's fate was sealed. One by one, Earth's ships moved in, striking at the vulnerable Deathworlder fleet. The humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. Their resolve was unshakable. They had seen what the Deathworlders were capable of, and they would not let their homes and families be destroyed without a fight. In the heart of space, Earth's forces collided with the stunned Deathworlders. The Deathworlders' once unbreakable fleet now had no choice but to endure the human onslaught. Every shot fired, every strike from a human ship was a testament to the resilience of Earth. Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to protect everything they held dear. On the ground, Earth's armies were also advancing. The war was no longer just a battle in space. The Deathworlders had taken control of many key locations, but humanity was taking them back, one by one. Soldiers fought in the streets, in the cities, and in the fields. Wherever the Deathworlders had set foot, humans followed, reclaiming their land. The tide was turning. Slowly but surely, the Deathworlder forces were being driven back. Their warships fell one by one, and their ground forces were pushed out. Earth had shown them something the Deathworlders had never expected, that humans, when cornered, were capable of the unimaginable. Commander Craner's voice crackled through the communication channel, his frustration palpable. "Fall back. We are retreating," he ordered, realizing that the situation was hopeless. His fleet, once an unstoppable force, was now reduced to a scattering collection of crippled ships. As Earth's forces closed in, the remaining Deathworlder ships scrambled to retreat. The humans had not just won. They had humiliated their attackers. The great fleet that had come to conquer Earth was now fleeing for its life, leaving behind only destruction and the ruins of their once proud ships. The humans, however, were not celebrating. The battle had been hard-fought, and many lives had been lost. The damage to the Earth was severe, but the victory was theirs. General Miller, looking out at the wreckage in space, allowed herself a moment of quiet relief. They had won, but the cost had been high. The war was not over, but humanity had shown the Deathworlders something they would never forget: that Earth was not a world to be conquered. For the first time in the war, the Deathworlders realized that they were not the ones in control. Humanity had shown them that, when pushed, humans could be deadly, and they would stop at nothing to protect their home. With the Deathworlder fleet retreating into the cold depths of space, Earth's forces didn't hesitate. They had no intention of allowing the invaders to escape and regroup. The pulse weapon had crippled the enemy's technological advantage, but the victory needed to be secured, not just in space, but on the ground as well. General Sandra Miller's voice echoed through the communication channels, rallying the forces to press forward. "Do not let them get away. We finish this now," she commanded, her tone sharp and resolute. On Earth, every city, every battlefront, was alive with the energy of human resilience. Military units, once outmatched and on the defensive, now surged forward with renewed strength. The war had shifted in their favor, and humanity was not about to give the Deathworlders another chance to regroup. The streets that had once been occupied by the enemy were now filled with the unmistakable presence of human soldiers pushing back. The Deathworlders, disoriented and in disarray, had not expected Earth's response to be so swift and decisive. They were not accustomed to facing an enemy with the willpower to chase them across the stars and beyond. Craner, still aboard his damaged flagship, watched helplessly as his fleet scrambled to avoid the Earth forces closing in. They were caught in a vice, trapped between Earth's vengeful fleet in space and the human military on the ground. "It's over," Craner muttered bitterly, standing before the large viewport of his command ship, watching as Earth's warships flanked his crippled fleet. "We never should have underestimated them." His officers stood silent, unable to offer any solution. The Deathworlders were on the run, but that didn't mean they were defeated just yet. Their ships were battered, but they were still dangerous. They were still powerful. The remaining Deathworlder vessels began scattering, trying to regroup in smaller groups. The sight of them running was humiliating, but they were dangerous cornered animals. Earth's military, however, was relentless. The pulse weapon had given them the upper hand, but it wasn't just the weapon that had changed the game. It was the human will to fight. It was the desperation that coursed through their veins, the love for their families, their homes, and the planet they had sworn to protect. No weapon could match that kind of determination. One by one, Earth's ships engaged in what seemed like an unstoppable pursuit. Fighters, bombers, and dreadnoughts, all working in sync, zeroing in on their weakened adversaries. No ship could hide for long. Earth's forces were closing in, and soon the Deathworlders would have nowhere to run. In the skies above the battle-scarred cities of Earth, the atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Cities once under siege were now being liberated. Soldiers raced to clear every building, every block, from the invaders. They didn't need to be told how high the stakes were. The Earth had already been ravaged by the invaders, but humanity wasn't going to give up until the last alien was removed from their home. The battle raged on across multiple fronts. From the eastern seaboard to the dense jungles of the Amazon, humans were reclaiming their territory. Resistance from the Deathworlder ground forces was minimal. They were too scattered, too disorganized after the devastating blows dealt by Earth's military. They were starting to crumble under the pressure. Meanwhile, General Miller had her eyes fixed on the bigger picture, space. She knew that while Earth's ground forces were pushing forward, the war in the stars was far from over. There were still pockets of resistance, and they couldn't afford to let even one of the Deathworlder ships slip away. The pulse weapon had given them an edge, but they needed to deliver the final blow. "We need to hit them hard. Hit them now," Miller said, turning toward her fleet admiral. "Prepare to deploy the last wave." The plan was simple: corner and annihilate the remaining ships. Earth's fighters had taken out most of the Deathworlder fleet's leadership and heavy hitters, but there were still a few ships left that had to be dealt with swiftly. Earth wasn't about to offer any mercy. The planet had been scared, and there was no time to waste. The final wave of Earth's fleet shot into space like a string of angry meteors, swarming toward the scattered remnants of the Deathworlder fleet. This was it. The Deathworlders had nowhere to run. No reinforcements were coming. The humans had drawn the line, and they were prepared to wipe out the rest. Back on Earth, civilians stood in awe as they watched the sky above them flicker with the lights of victory. The ships they saw above them now were Earth's warships, flying high with purpose. There was a brief moment of calm before the final act of the battle took place. In space, the final moments of the conflict arrived. The last remaining Deathworlder ships attempted to regroup in a last-ditch effort to retaliate, but they were swiftly overwhelmed by the Earth fleet. The humans' fleet swarmed, surrounding the enemy vessels from all directions. Earth's fighters, with their pilots now hardened by months of war, made quick work of the remaining ships. Commander Krenner, watching from his flagship as his forces were destroyed, could only stare in disbelief. The humans had done the impossible. Not only had they fought back, they had won. "Retreat, retreat," he barked, but it was too late. His flagship exploded in a massive burst of energy as Earth's last wave of attack ships finished the job. With that, the war was over. The Deathworlders had been defeated. Humanity had survived. General Miller, her heart still pounding from the chaos of the battle, finally allowed herself to exhale. The fight had been brutal, but Earth had done the impossible. They had not only defended their planet, they had driven off an empire of invaders. In the silence that followed, Earth was left with the bitter taste of victory. They had won, but they had paid a heavy price. The war had changed them. And though the Deathworlders were no longer a threat, humanity would never forget the lesson they had learned that day. The silence that settled across the Earth was deafening. The battle was over, but the echoes of destruction still reverberated through every corner of the planet. Cities once under siege now lay in ruins, their structures battered and broken, but their spirit unbroken. Humans had fought back, reclaimed their homes, and in doing so, had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. General Sandra Miller stood atop a command center in a vast underground bunker, looking out over the massive screens that displayed the status of the war. The numbers were staggering. The destruction was almost incomprehensible. Entire fleets of Deathworlder ships were reduced to debris floating in space. On the ground, however, the scars left by the invaders were still visible. "We've won, but at what cost?" Miller thought. Though Earth had driven the Deathworlders back, the war had claimed millions of lives. Entire colonies had been wiped out, and countless homes lost. Even in victory, the weight of the loss was immense. She exhaled sharply, turning away from the screens. "We've secured the planet, but now we rebuild. We remember what was lost, but we cannot dwell on it. The future belongs to us." Her words, though heavy with sorrow, rang true. Humanity had shown the Deathworlders that they were no longer willing to be passive. The days of Earth being seen as an easy target, a planet to be conquered, were over. Earth had stood firm and had won, despite overwhelming odds, despite the destruction. Meanwhile, across the war-torn world, the people of Earth were coming together to begin the long process of healing. Soldiers and civilians alike worked side by side to clear the rubble, rebuild cities, and honor the memories of those lost. The devastation was profound, but so too was the strength of human will. Elsewhere, in space, Earth's warships hovered above the remains of the Deathworlder fleet. The vast emptiness of space was now a haunting reminder of the enemies they had once feared. The Deathworlders, who had come with arrogance and overwhelming force, were no more. Their pride had been their undoing. Among the remaining fleet commanders, there was no joy, only reflection. The humiliation they had suffered at the hands of the humans was something they would never forget. The idea of facing a species that had once been seen as primitive, insignificant, had been enough to shake the foundation of their empire. Earth had proven that, though small in comparison to the galaxies that surrounded it, it was fierce, and it would not be conquered. "We'll never underestimate them again," Cranner, the leader of the Deathworlder fleet, said in a cold, remorseful tone as he surveyed the remnants of his fleet. "They may have lost cities, people, and ships, but their spirit is unyielding. They'll never stop fighting." Back on Earth, General Miller addressed her people in a worldwide broadcast. The message was simple, yet powerful. "We've shown the galaxy that humanity will not be silenced. We will rebuild, and we will stand tall. Today, Earth stands as proof that no matter how dark the days get, the light of human resilience will always burn brighter. Together, we are stronger than any enemy." The words resonated across the globe, uniting the people of Earth in a way that hadn't been seen since the early days of the war. They were tired, scared, and broken, but they were not defeated. The planet had endured the impossible and emerged victorious. And in the aftermath of this victory, something new was born. A sense of unity, a determination that Earth would never be a target again. As the months passed, the galaxy began to take notice. The Deathworlders' defeat became a topic of conversation, a lesson to those who had once thought of Earth as insignificant. Across the stars, people began to realize that humanity was not just a fledgling species, it was a force to be reckoned with. Earth was no longer a world to be feared for its vulnerability, but for the strength that its people carried within them. But for the people of Earth, the fight was far from over. Rebuilding the world, restoring what had been lost, would take time. It would require effort, courage, and the very spirit that had won them the war. The scars of the conflict would remain, but they would be a testament to the strength of human will. In the quiet moments, when the dust had settled and the wounds were being healed, humans looked up at the stars with a new understanding. The galaxy was vast, and the universe was full of unknowns. But no matter what came next, Earth had shown that it would never be an easy target again. The day the Deathworlders had underestimated humanity was the day they had sealed their fate. The story of Earth's victory would be told across the stars, not just as a warning to enemies, but as a testament to the power of the human spirit. The fight had been long, and the victory hard-won, but Earth had proven that when pushed to the edge, humanity would rise, unbroken, unyielding, and unstoppable. Months passed, and the scars of the war began to heal. Earth, though bruised and battered, stood resilient. The memories of the battle with the Deathworlders were fresh, but humanity had never been more united. The entire planet had witnessed what they were capable of when they stood together. And now it was time to rebuild, not just cities or military forces, but their very identity. General Sandra Miller, once the leader of the Human Defense Forces, now stood at the front of a global council, addressing the people of Earth. The war had taken its toll, but humanity had emerged stronger than anyone could have predicted. The world was no longer divided by borders or ideologies. The fight against the Deathworlders had united them in a way nothing else could. Governments, once split by old grudges, now worked in harmony, building a new world from the ashes of the old. "We may have lost much," General Miller said, her voice steady, "but we've gained something far more valuable. The world is united, and we've proven to the galaxy that humanity will not be a footnote in the history of the stars." The council's words resonated with the people. The feeling of unity that spread across Earth was unlike anything that had been felt in centuries. People worked side by side, scientists and engineers, soldiers and civilians, each playing their part in the grand effort to rebuild. The cities, once reduced to rubble, were being brought back to life. But it wasn't just the physical world that was changing. The spirit of humanity had been reshaped by the war. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. The Deathworlders, once confident in their superiority, had underestimated the humans they considered weak and insignificant. Now, Earth was no longer a planet to be ignored. It was a power in its own right, a force to be reckoned with. Across the stars, the story of humanity's victory spread like wildfire. It wasn't just the sheer might of their military that impressed the galaxy. It was the strength of their hearts, the resilience of their spirit. The Deathworlders, after their crushing defeat, withdrew to their own corners of the galaxy. But their leaders could never forget the humiliation they had suffered. They'd invaded Earth expecting an easy victory, only to be defeated in ways they could not have imagined. The leaders of the Deathworlders' empire gathered, still haunted by the images of their shattered fleet, their ships floating in the void of space. "We underestimated them," said the fleet commander, his voice grim. "They are not the weak, primitive species we once thought. They are warriors, and we have paid the price for that mistake." Meanwhile, humanity continued to grow stronger. The war had been a crucible, forging bonds between people that had never existed before. The planet had come together not just in defense, but in a common vision for the future. The fight was not just for survival anymore. It was for something greater, for peace, for prosperity, and for a place in the galaxy it would no longer be in doubt. Earth's leaders now knew that their planet was not just a protector of its own, but a beacon of hope for other civilizations that had been oppressed, bullied, or ignored by the larger powers in the universe. There were whispers of alliances being formed, of other species who were looking to Earth for guidance, for strength. Humanity had shown the galaxy that it could rise against any threat, no matter how overwhelming. But even as they rebuilt and expanded their influence across the stars, humanity remained humble. The lessons learned in the fires of war were not forgotten. Earth had been forced to become something it never thought it could be, a force of vengeance and resilience. But now it was determined not to fall into the same trap of arrogance that had led others to underestimate it. Earth was not seeking revenge anymore. It was seeking understanding, unity, and a new future. The vastness of space no longer seemed as intimidating as it once had. No longer would Earth be seen as the weak link. Humanity was ready for whatever came next. The future was uncertain, but there was one thing Earth had learned. They were no longer alone. They were no longer helpless. They were no longer to be ignored. The stars were waiting, and humanity was ready to reach for them, with a strength that had been forged in the darkest hours and emerged brighter than ever.